Okay, Dead Gang. So this is Max, and she explains a story about her now divorced husband. He proclaimed to be the Antichrist, as well as believing that he was like some God of War guy. And I watched this whole 10-part story so you wouldn't have to. So Max and her husband, they have been together for over 10 years and they have 2 children together. But it all came crashing down when her husband started going through a mental psychosis. I mean, Dead Gang, her ex-husband had died in this deep psychosis to the point where he was reciting Quran verses, biblical verses, like I said, proclaiming that he was the Antichrist slash God of War. Now, for what Max says is that the changes were slow at first. Max's now ex-husband had quit his job. And then Max further tells us is that he further started spiraling into his erratic behavior once he abruptly stopped medication, to which he was on for like years. Now, at first, his obsession with these religious texts seemed like a spiritual awakening to everybody. But then Max started noticing very alarming moments. Like, for example, he started becoming more volatile. He started becoming really angry with Max, very irrational, and like being very short-tempered with her. So like she would just say little things and he would just go crazy. Max's ex-husband started isolating himself and cutting off his family ties. And he only started to engage into people who was basically believing in his delusion. Now, as this situation became worse, Max decided to take the adult pathway by trying to shield her children from all of this hostility and drama. Who, mind you, they were just 7 and 9. Now, they were supposed to have regular visitations with Max's ex-husband. But obviously, because her ex-husband was going through this whole weird spiritual awakening, proclaiming him to be the Antichrist, she knew that this was no longer a good idea. So she fought for a 3-year restraining order, and she wanted full custody. Now, the process wasn't easy because in court, when it was due of the day that they were supposed to be in court, her ex-husband wouldn't show up. He would only show up via Zoom call. Now, struggling to keep her emotions in check, Max pleaded with the judge to order a mental health reevaluation for her ex-husband. But the ruling came as an emergency custody order, along with the restraining order. Now, when the judge granted her full custody, she felt numb. Because it was like more of like a mixture of fear and relief, because like now she's scared that her children will have to deal with the deteriorating mind state that their father is going through. So then the day after the hearing, Max got a call from her mother. And like the conversation was basically like, hey, your ex-husband ended up getting a wellness check because the co-worker that they were apparently living together with ended up showing some concerns for the ex-husband. Now, Max's ex and her, they had a joint bank account, and her ex-husband would run that shit up, basically leaving Max to have to deal with the financial burden. Like, she watched in horror as this man racked up debt on their credit card. Like, I'm talking about he would spend recklessly on like gym equipment and just his lifestyle. And what made it worse is that because her ex-husband was the authorized user of that credit card, she wasn't able to remove herself from that account. Now, during all this time, Max's ex-husband also decided to take to social media to explain his side of the story. How basically portraying that Max is a bad person, that she's putting him through all of this crazy stuff. But mind you, like I said, this man was proclaiming himself to be the Antichrist and slash God of War. And because of her fear of like possibly having Max's ex-husband visit her children, their children, she tried to insist him to get a drug test, to which he did, but everything came back negative. So the guy wasn't on drugs. He was just going through this mental psychosis. Now, fearing for her safety, Max kept track of all of her ex-husband's whereabouts by using his home security cameras, by hacking into his Tesla, to which I didn't really know that, but I think it was like GPS, because I guess the way that she explained it is that she still had his location. So like, because he probably had his phone on him at all times, she knew where he was, when he was going to places, where he was going to places. She basically kept track of all of that 24/7 because she was scared that one day this man would show up to her front step. And mind you, she has a restraining order. And to her surprise, guys, he ends up showing up to her house, uninvited, unannounced, with his shirt off. But thank God she called the cops and they showed up immediately, like within 3 minutes. Now, she ends up showing the police the restraining order, but because it wasn't initiated, because like from what I was told in the story, you had to verbally and physically like present the restraining order to that individual. So this was like the first time that she was able to like actually be in person with him, because remember, mind you, she never got to meet him in person. So because the police were still there, She then requested that she would be able, like, if she would like be able to talk to him in person. To which then she asks her ex-husband, she's like, hey, can you just please, for the sake of our children, just put yourself in a mental like hospital. He actually volunteers, he accepts, so he ends up going there. Now, while there, she's like calling the mental hospital and she's like trying to check in with them. She's like, hey, how long are you gonna keep him there? Can you keep him there long? Like, what's happening? And they basically said, like, hey, we're trying to get him back on medication, but he's refusing due to religious beliefs. And to be quite honest with you, we can't really keep him here for long anyways. So this puts her in a whole kind of like fear mode, because now at this point they had to let him go. So he was only there for a couple of days. Now, despite Max's efforts to protect her children from all this drama, this man would post daily about portraying Max to be this bad person, trying to keep him away from her children and all of this crazy yoo-ha stuff. And everyone was believing in this. While, mind you, he's still running up the joint account that they have together. Now, eventually Max had enough with this shit. She's like, you know what? I'm not going to enable this anymore. I'm finally going to cut him off. And because he took this to social media, Max says that because her ex-husband's like not really a ugly guy, people who were supporting him decided to make like Cash App accounts and GoFundMe accounts to basically like pay for this man. So Max was horrified watching desperate women like just basically give this man money and buy his groceries and all of this crazy shit, while again glorifying that he's the Antichrist. I mean, at this point, Max felt helpless. And in her desperation, she had no choice but to tell her children in the most respectful, kindest way as to why they are not able to see their father. I mean, this is a true crazy story, guys, of mental health at its finest. I mean, Max had no choice but to tell her side of the story because of what her husband was doing. I mean, she had all the evidence. Even at one point, her ex-husband sending her a video of him punching through a mirror and breaking it. All she was basically trying to do is, because she was in fear of her children's life, she had to talk about her story. Because she felt like with every attempt that she tried to help him, she faced more resistance and danger. And every effort to shield her family from this made the situation more volatile. I mean, it's a powerful reminder between a fragile line of love, mental health, and the need for protection, as well as what that looks like if that balance is shattered. I mean, mental health is real, guys. And like I always say, that gang, what do you think of this?